The year is 2022, and I just saw this image in a Discord server. I don't have context for the conversation, but I'm captivated by it. The depth behind his eyes. What does he ponder? What secrets does he hold? I don't talk much in this server, but I need to know everything about him. I frantically ask for a name and wait for an answer. Any answer. I watch my Discord acquaintances typing with bated breath, and then they change the topic and completely ignore my question. They must be intimidated by how cool my profile picture is and are too scared to talk to me directly. It's fine, because I've already consulted my council of scholars to find the truth. This boy is Tetsuo Akatsuki, the protagonist of a 2017 mobile game called Prison Boys. This news is devastating to me. A free-to-play mobile game that is, at the time, already 5 years old. I don't trust iPhone games to begin with, even from developers I'm familiar with. There's no way this game answers its promises as an adventure or escape game. I assume that, like every mobile game I've ever played, it'll be a cash grab without any heart or soul. The superficial beauty will vanish the second I download it. But I need to know everything I can about this boy. I download the game and wait patiently to be disappointed, and it's like good. It's a video game. I'm completely hooked on it, and not in the way you get hooked on Candy Crush. I really care about this story. My chance encounter with Prison Boys completely changed the way I think about mobile games, because I didn't stop there. I played every single game translated into English by this developer, and they made me realize that we are getting scammed out of good games for our phones. So now you're gonna listen to me talk about it, the eye-opening world of SEEC Incorporated. As of time of recording, there are 14 SEEC games available in English. This isn't every single game SEEC has released, most of them haven't been translated from the original Japanese. There are a lot of games in this catalog that I really want to play and just can't because they're not in my language. SEEC separates its games into SEEC Escape, the more in-depth visual novels with puzzle elements, and SEEC Casual, mostly otome games. I played most of the SEEC Casual games to completion, and I honestly really like most of them, but for the sake of this video, I'm only talking about SEEC Escape. Of these games, there are two that I'll be skipping over for time: The Caged Garden, Cock Robin, and Tsumugu Logic. Both of these games are really interesting on their own, and I'd like to come back and talk about them individually someday, but I'm trying to keep this video somewhat focused. That leaves 5 games that I'll be covering here. So let's start at the beginning. I wanted to do the whole video essayist wears thematic costumes thing, but I don't have a 1920s Japanese police uniform, so I'm dressed as a different cop because I found a Batman mask in my stuff. Prison Boys is the first SEEC Escape game I played, and I think it's a pretty good taster for them as a whole. The thing that makes it stand out for this developer is that it's a historical drama with 0 fantasy elements. Every other game I talk about today has what I would call fantasy bullshit, and this one has things that are definitely implausible, but it's all kind of rooted in reality. A lot of SEEC games get really dark, and this one has probably the most serious, sobering subject matter because it is about the Japanese military police in 1923. There's a lot going on there that I'm not knowledgeable enough to really talk about in depth, but I do want to put some content warnings for every game I discuss, and this one involves suicide, murder, involuntary drug use, chemical warfare, general war crimes, and just the whole secret police thing. You get it. It's a lot for a game that I went into expecting a generic escape room from, and honestly, it does a lot of it really well. I learned about Japanese history because of this game that I thought would be a completely vapid mobile app experience. I won't be going into the full plots of any of these games because it's not that interesting for me to just sit here and tell you what happens, and because I really want you to go play these if you see any interest in them. But I will be giving some synopsis because I want to. So in this game you play as Tetsuo Akatsuki, a member of the Special Police Force who is trying to solve the mystery behind his friend's murder. He's part of what the game calls the Special Political Police, the Toko, based in a secret basement in the Asakusa 12-story building. Most of the events of this game are entirely fictionalized, but they are based on some solid reality. There was a real police force in Japan, locally called Toko, established to suppress dangerous thought, basically stop political unrest, and especially communist and socialist movements. Your first mission as Tetsu is to expose a man for being involved with socialists, and the entire game really comes down to him starting to question whether this mission that he has dedicated his life to, the protection of the government as it is now, is right. The part that's really interesting to me is that the Asakusa 12-story building is a real building that was in Japan at the time. It was destroyed on September 1st, 1923 by the Great Kanto earthquake. The game Prison Boy starts on August 22nd, which means we all know going in that there's a matter of days before this entire building is destroyed. Almost every major ending of the game involves you fleeing from the building as it collapses. It's such an amazing way to create tension with just historical knowledge. I mean, this is what makes the Titanic movie so compelling, right? You see these characters go through incredibly personal stories, and you know that none of it is going to matter when the boat sinks or the building collapses. Gameplay-wise, this plays a lot like Ace Attorney. You talk to people to gain information, and you explore environments to find evidence and put things together. Because you're in the special police and you're taught not to question your superiors, so much information is hidden from you, and you have to sneak around the prison to find it. I was really tense during a lot of the search sections, even though I knew from genre standard that a guard wasn't going to jump out and catch me unless that was a specifically pre-written plot moment. When you're walking around this prison at night and your companion keeps warning you that if you two get caught, you're basically dead, it creates a really brilliantly charged atmosphere. Most of the gameplay really comes down to opening doors and boxes to find plot-relevant objects. You solve a puzzle to get a key that unlocks a box with a puzzle in it, and then you solve that puzzle to get a code that unlocks a different box that has, like, special military documents or something. Most of the puzzles are ridiculous, but I don't think too many of them are horrifically obtuse. You're not going to be pixel searching the way you might in a bad point-and-click adventure game. It's still not perfect, and there are going to be times when you try every single item in a room and have no idea how to move forward, but those are pretty sparing. I don't think there's anything wrong with using a walkthrough occasionally for a game like this, especially because it is definitely not intended for English-speaking audiences, and it really affects the puzzles in certain ways. This is a recurring issue in a lot of SEEC games, but Prison Boys has what I think is a unique problem. First of all, every English mobile release of a SEEC game is pretty iffy on the translation. I don't think most of them are outright confusing, but you can tell based on the awkward wording that it is not originally written in English. And some of these awkward moments make solving puzzles really difficult, because some of the puzzles really rely on the Japanese language being the way that it is, and they aren't translated super well into English. These are the puzzles that I think are the most frustrating and that you might have to turn to a guide for. The ones that expect you, as an English speaker, to understand kanji or hiragana so that you can input the code correctly. Because Prison Boys is so historical and rooted in Japanese culture, it has more of these moments than some of the other games. For the record, I feel like I can't dock these games that much for that because they weren't originally designed for English audiences. They shouldn't be investing endless time into translating and localizing the games for English speakers if that's not profitable, and honestly, I can see why it wouldn't be. I feel like I'm the biggest SEEC Incorporated fan in the United States, and I'm not spending money on it, so I get it. On the topic of spending money, I do want to talk about mobile gaminess because it's better than I expected, but it's still an iPhone game. You get 5 free story tickets every single day, meaning you can progress 5 stages every 24 hours. There are 164 stages in the game, and you do get to play the first 30-ish without limit, but that still means it's going to take roughly a month to finish the game, unless you buy tickets which are sold in the in-game shop. I am very stubborn, and I have a personal rule about mobile games, which is that I will never buy a single microtransaction in any of them. So I wasn't very tempted by the ticket thing, and I also didn't find it to be too bothersome in the free-to-play experience. Actually, pacing the game makes it easier to maintain interest, in my opinion. I might have dropped it if I could play the entire thing all at once, but because I was stopped before I could find all the answers, I kept coming back every day. The part that actually tempted me is these special stories you can buy that are basically extra stages giving background information about the characters. I'm sad that I'll never see these. You can get them all for $8, and I think it's worth that if you care about the characters enough to want to learn more about them, especially if you played the rest of the game for no money at all. It's not something I can justify buying, but it's a really cool idea to me. The game even says that these stories only release after the true ending, and it kind of urges you away from buying them until you finish the game, which I really love. I know this format is inherently consumer exploitative, but it's nice for a game to say, don't buy this until you're really sure you want it. This game also has ads. When you go back and replay stages, You won't use a ticket, but you will watch an ad in between every single one. Which means if you're anything like me, you're gonna get really used to seeing this guy. I hate the king so much. Who is putting him in these situations? A giant icicle over a lava pit. Be serious. He's doing this to himself because he wants attention. And if you play the game, you're enabling him. If the king from Royal Match has 100 haters, I am one of them. If the king from Royal Match has 1 hater, it is me. If the king from Royal Match has no haters, I am dead in some kind of lava pit related accident. The ads are the worst part of these games. Prison Boys is pretty decent about it, but it's still exhausting, especially because to unlock the final chapter of the game, you have to replay the first 4 chapters and make very specific decisions so that 2 characters will be willing to help you progress at the end. When you're replaying those chapters, and you have to pause every 5 minutes to watch this failure of a king die because the person in the ad is horrible at the video game, I know that's a tactic by the ad developers, right? They make the gameplay bad so that you think, oh my god, this person sucks at this game and it looks so easy, I'm gonna download it and show them. I know they do that on purpose, but oh my god, if you guys really cared about the king, you would get better at match 3. Anyway, I have a lot of Royal Match related feelings, but this is not about that game. This is about Prison Boys. And beyond the ads and shitty translation, I really like this game. When you beat the game, you can unlock character design and development notes. And you can just tell from the art and the thought processes described as they were creating these characters that so much love went into this game. It's really surreal to see because I rarely think of mobile games as having any kind of heart behind them, you know? This platform seems built for money-hungry developers, and it wasn't until seeing these pieces of concept art that I really thought of this game as being made by people. A team who made it because they want to, not a corporation cashing in on a profitable market. I cried when I finished Baldur's Gate 3 and saw all the notes from the people who developed the game in the credits. I never would have expected a game on my iPhone to create the same feeling in me, but the Prison Boys concept art did. There's also one specific scene I just want to point out right now. This is very late in the game, and I can't really talk about it without spoiling a lot, so I'm just going to give zero context. When Tetsu and his companions are locked up in the basement of the prison and Nagi is drugged and becomes violent and almost murders Tetsu, there is one way to calm him down, and it's by showing him his own reflection in a mirror. I just want to hold on to that little piece of information because it's going to be something you think about a lot if you play the rest of these games like I did. But yeah, I really liked Prison Boys. If any of that sounded interesting to you, I think this is a great game to start with. And even though it can be a little rough on the edges, it really renewed my faith in what a mobile game can be. Infinite Prison sucks shit. So once I finished Prison Boys, I wanted to go back and play games from this developer from the earliest release I could find to the newest. Which means I went back to escape game Infinite Prison, which I think is just called Infinite Prison. When I talked about being afraid of Prison Boys being a generic money-hungry escape room game, this is what I was talking about. Infinite Prison is the worst game from this developer that has been translated into English. What's wild to me is that Infinite Prison came out in late 2016, and Prison Boys came out in early 2017. There's roughly a 6-month gap between them. The idea of this company going from generic slop to Prison Boys in that length of time is honestly inspiring. Like, you can turn your life around at any moment. It's beautiful. Anyway, I really don't want to talk about this one for longer than I have to, because I don't recommend that anyone plays it, unless you really enjoy bad games. It is bad in a funny way, though, and at least gameplay-wise it's fine. It isn't broken. The one upside is that it is much shorter than Prison Boys, and it's not paced by a ticket system, so you won't be stuck playing it for very long. I think I completed all routes in one night because I wanted to be done with this game as quickly as humanly possible. The story is about some guy who takes a job offer from a sketchy website to break someone's granddaughter out of prison. He then gets kidnapped and sent to the remote prison where he has to get out with the granddaughter, but when he gets there, he finds out there are 3 women and they all claim to be the granddaughter. Oh no! Who's the real one? Can you tell how uninvested I am in this story? Who cares? The prison is in these like ancient ruins and it's guarded by this Minotaur guy. The true ending of the game, you find out there wasn't a granddaughter at all, and he was actually sent to get this woman who was disguised as this bird because she's the gatekeeper of the temple and the last surviving member of her people, and the only person who can get access to the secret treasure in the ruins, which is what his employer is really after. And the main character goes with her to be sealed in the temple forever. because he decides after like 5 minutes together that they're madly in love. This girl is 13 years old, by the way. Every other character in the game is an adult. Every other woman you can romance is an adult woman. So I don't understand why the true ending has to involve a literal child. It's weird, and it's only the last 10 minutes of the game, which is even weirder. There is nothing in the rest of the story that would make you think this is where it's going. I don't feel bad about spoiling that, because you shouldn't play this game. It's quick, but it's also pretty tedious. To get every ending, you have to replay the same segment literally 10 times in a row. And the game locks the text skip button behind a paywall. So you have to spend money to skip those repeated conversations. If we want to talk about mobile games deliberately annoying their player base into spending money, I cannot think of a more egregious example than charging for the ability to skip text in a visual novel. The puzzle sections are decent, except for the route to the true ending, which is like ridiculous. I really just struggle with how generic it all feels when I compare it with every other SEEC escape game that I talk about. It's funny. Genuinely, I think there were times when I was laughing with the game instead of at it. But it's also about getting with women in bizarrely sexualized prison uniforms instead of being about, like, a character going through an arc. It's fine. It's a mobile app escape game. There are a billion games like this on the App Store. At least this one isn't broken. If you want to do what most people turn to mobile games to do, mindlessly play something to fill free time, this is fine for that. There's nothing wrong with a game having that goal in mind. But compared with other games from the same developer, it sucks shit. And I don't want to linger on the one bad game here, so I'm just gonna keep wearing the Batman mask. I think it fits the vibe. I mean, I know it doesn't fit this vibe, but it fits this vibe. So, I played Alice's Spiritual Judge next because it shows up after Prison Boys and Infinite Prison in the App Store. But it actually came out in 2015 before both of them, which feels really strange to me because Alice's Spiritual Judge is so much better in every way than Infinite Prison. I don't know how they regressed. I said I would give content warnings for these games, and I think this one needs it the most because it is a story about suicide and grief and mental illness. I have personal experience with mental illness, and I have lost people close to me by suicide, so this one in particular got very upsetting for me, especially the end of the game. I would have liked any kind of warning for this because it was just a lot. It was really good, but it was a lot. I still would recommend this game. Just be aware that this is going to be something that is covered in it. The game is about a high school girl named Alice Kanzaki who is discovering the truth behind the death of her best friend, White Rabbit. That sounds kind of similar to Prison Boys at the beginning, but it's really not. This game is the most abstract of the ones I'm discussing today, and you're never really sure if what's happening is something that actually happened or if it is a recreation of events through Alice's memory. This isn't the first piece of media to do this scary, creepy, mental illness Alice in Wonderland vibe, but this one does it really well. Everything just feels off. Even in the setting, the backgrounds are always in this warm light, like the sun is setting outside, but you're at a high school, so it feels really weird to be there after school hours. It never really tries to scare you, but the whole thing is really surreal and unsettling, and there are really creepy moments, especially with March Hare. I think it's a pretty good way of showing grief brain and the guilt that Alice is dealing with as she goes through the death of her friend. The character design is also really cool to me. You really feel like these are representations of real people who Alice knows that just have been distorted through the Alice in Wonderland vibe. My favorite detail of all is that the Queen of Hearts has these doll pivots on her knees. You won't see these in the game because the sprites only show them from the waist up. That was a design choice that someone just thought was cool and didn't actually make it into the final product. Again, these games have so much genuine passion behind them, and I know that every game is made by a person. I know that every piece of art is created by a person, but it still just strikes me every single time. An iPhone game can mean something to someone. The translation in this one caused me the most issues. There's a whole courtroom set up, and you're defending certain characters from being accused of the murder of White Rabbit. And there are times in the cross-examination when I genuinely did not know what was being said or what choice I was making. It was just really poorly translated. Most of the other games have more "this is awkward, but I know what's happening" moments, so that was a lot for me to get used to. Again, though, I really can't hold it against these games as a whole. The English translation is definitely kind of an afterthought. You can tell from the mechanics that this is one of their earliest games. It matches Prison Boys in the art style and the heart, but in terms of the actual gameplay, it is a lot closer to Infinite Prison. It feels like a bridge between them, even though it came before them both. I really wonder about the development history behind these games. It's hard to find any clear information about them because this is what seems to be a small Japanese company that mostly works in advertising and consulting. They're not a game studio, and these games aren't the focus of their work. Also, they don't translate most of their games into English. Most of their work is exclusively Japanese. So even if the information I want to find is publicly available, it's not in my language. I'm not even totally sure that the dates I'm using are correct for the original releases, or if they align with the English translations. That might be the cause of the confusion I had in the App Store when I was trying to play these in order and completely failed to do that. YouTube isn't my job, so I'm not putting any proper research into this. I hope that doesn't matter to you. But the same artist definitely worked on Alice's Spiritual Judge and Prison Boys. Prison Boys actually credits both the art and the writing to the same person, and their art style is present in basically every other game I talk about in this video. Except for Infinite Prison. I really don't think they're the artist who did the art in that game. It's kind of difficult to find the credits in the early SEEC games for some reason. There isn't a credits button. Sometimes they play when the game finishes, sometimes they don't. So I don't totally know who the artist is in Infinite Prison, but I really don't think it's the same person. I mean, you can kind of be the judge if you compare some of the art from the games I definitely know are by this person, as opposed to Infinite Prison. So it feels like Infinite Prison was built on the bones of Alice's Spiritual Judge to try and cause the same effect, to be the same kind of game, but without the actual substance that that artist and writer brought to the table. And without that substance, it just doesn't work. I'm really happy that Infinite Prison is the only departure, and that artist got to go even further in the future releases like Prison Boys and the rest of the games I discussed today. I mean, I basically made that story up in my head. I don't know that there was any issue with the artist. I don't know how they went from Infinite Prison and back. I don't know anything. But when you look at the releases in order, it does feel like a really brief battle that ended in a victory for games as an art form. So Alice's Spiritual Judge is much shorter than Prison Boys. I think it's similar to Infinite Prison in length, and the gameplay is much simpler. There are a lot less puzzle and exploration sections. Most of the story comes through conversation and slowly trying to gain information from characters. I actually think the increased focus on character interaction fits the courtroom vibe of things better. I really like the puzzles in the other games, but in this case, Alice is kind of the Phoenix Wright, and she is cross-examining people to gain more information and try and figure out who is actually behind this mystery. It works for the game that this is trying to be. It's smaller in scope than some of the others, but that's not to the detriment of the game itself. And even though the translation is abhorrent at times, the story is still really impactful. I think it has some concerning implications about, grief and survivor's guilt and how responsible we are for the state of the people around us. But as an individual story, it's good. Like I said, it really inspired a deeply charged emotional reaction from me, and I did not think I would get something like that from an iPhone game. I am slowly learning that I can expect emotions wherever I go throughout these games. But that emotional reaction really is nothing compared to the next game I am going to talk about. I'm realizing right now, as I sit down to record this, that I could have, made an Emigo mask or something, and it would have been really cool, and, fit the vibe really well. But that would require a level of forethought and planning that I simply do not have the capacity for in anything, but especially not this. So, this is my Makoto Sahara closet cosplay. Do I look like the most depressed dad in the world right now? Also, I'm just gonna be real for a second. I only made this video so I could talk about Yotsume God. I will give a reason why I made this video in the next section. That's part of the script. The reason why I sat down to write this is so I could talk about Yotsume God. Because you can only tell your friends about the same obscure visual novel so many times before they start to fantasize about putting you into a royal match death trap. So, Yotsume God, am I right? I really struggle with this section because I would like to talk about every single layer of this story. But I also don't want to spoil it for anyone who might play it, because I really think you should play this game if you like visual novels. I'm going to go in depth later, and I'll give a warning before I do, and if knowing anything about the plot in depth is going to keep you from playing, and you might play, please skip that part. Please just skip to when I talk about Tascari Hotel. I just want you to play this game no matter what happens, okay? That's all I want. So for now, here's the shallow version. Yotsume God is the story of Mai Sahara, who is visiting her extended family for the first time ever. She doesn't know anything about her mother or the people in her family beyond her father, who she lives with in Tokyo. She's visiting this small village where her family lives when she gets lost in a shrine and is stuck there for spooky supernatural reasons. And with the help of this maybe ghost boy who's hanging out there, she has to find a way out. As she does so, she figures out the truth behind her family as a whole. This one gets kind of wacky with the content warnings because we have child neglect, child murder, postpartum depression, basically a lot of mother-child stuff that is really upsetting. This is the story of a really, really awful family and what it takes to heal from that situation. When it comes to gameplay, this one is a lot like Prison Boys. Instead of a ticket system, it has spiritual energy, a bar that decreases every time you play and increases throughout the game. It's the same thing, it paces your progress throughout the story. I like the ticket system more, but this isn't that different. The ridiculous puzzles are back, which I love. And this game has one of my favorite characters of all time, Imigo. Imigo, I love you, I'm here for you, I'm going to save you. The real strength of basically every SEEC game comes down to its cast. That is what makes you want to keep playing. And this one especially just has such a lovable cast of characters. But especially Imigo, my son. You might remember what I said before about microtransactions and how I refuse to spend any money on an iPhone game. That's true, but I have spent money on Yotsume God, because it has something that none of the other games I've discussed so far has, a full HD Steam re-release. That means you buy the game, and you have it. There are no ads, there is no pacing system, you play the game that you own for like $20. A full, real, entire game. Revolutionary. Who could have seen this? Finding this information changed my life, and it's the only reason I have given SEEC any money for anything they've done. Yotsume God for iPhone is good. Yotsume God Reunion, the remaster, is fantastic. We're at a really strange moment right now where these amazing games are being made and then the studios that make them are instantly getting shut down. Part of what makes me so skeptical about mobile games in general is the part they play in this industry crisis that's happening. So many companies have turned to the mobile app market and intense microtransactions to keep themselves viable. There are great studios making good games that are really hindered by the fact that they are on the mobile or free-to-play market. The example that always comes to mind for me is Project Moon, the studio behind Lobotomy Corporation and Library of Ruina, two great games with cult followings. In 2023, they released their third project, Limbus Company, a gacha game for mobile devices. Limbus Company is great, I love it, and I also hate that it exists. When you see people talk about Limbus Company, you will see the most glowing praise be, it's fantastic for a gacha game. This is what the free-to-play market represents to me. Amazing studios with fantastic ideas being forced to bend their visions into these little boxes so they can keep making a profit. Even the best product is going to have an asterisk beside it. Before being a piece of art, this was a vehicle for making money, and it hopes to exploit players into spending as much as possible. And SEEC took one of these stories that I am telling you I love while also giving constant caveats. The ads, the interruptions, the mobile gaminess. It took a game that is great for an iPhone game, and it made it into a visual novel that stands on its own. I love Yotsume God, and I love that Yotsume God Reunion lets me get rid of any limitations on its praise. Please play this game. Oh my god, please. Whatever. Let's move forward with some spoilers because I just want to talk about this game really, really badly. I want to show you in some small part how visually different Yotsume God Reunion can be from the original, and I think a great way of doing that would be a side-by-side of one particular moment. That is right. She used a hand mirror during a timed section of the game. Life hack: if you are ever in timed combat in a SEEC game, use the mirror. It's always going to be what you have to use. I love when studios have these kinds of tropes. It makes me so happy every time I play a new SEEC game and a mirror shows up and I just know that in 5 to 10 minutes there is going to be a timed section of the game where I have to use it. It brings me joy. I just have to bring it up because it brings me joy. Reunion has completely updated art and bonus content, and some of the puzzles have been altered for clarity, but for the most part it is the same game, it's just a better version of it. As an English speaker, the translation is obviously much better, and did away with some of the more confusing Japanese-based puzzles. If you play Yotsume God for mobile, it will not be as good as Reunion, but it's still worth playing. Imigo is there, and that's all that matters. I cry every time I complete any major ending in this game, and I know that's weird. Like, there's something going on here that is bigger than the game itself, because it should not make me cry so easily. But that effect still happens to me when I play the original release. I tear up when I think about this story in any capacity, regardless of the version it is. In visual novels with multiple endings, the player is usually expecting to have to go through most of the major endings to get the entire story. This game goes a little bit deeper because the character of Mai has to go through those endings multiple times too. They all sort of click together in universe. You as a player have to replay the game to unlock the true ending. And so does Mai. She lives through this experience multiple times, and the only way for her to get to the true ending is to experience other endings. That comes with some time travel bullshit implications that really don't show up until the end. You might find that tiresome. I think it's really cool, especially for a story about breaking the cycle of familial abuse. Having Mai have to go through this multiple times and get this sense of deja vu is really cool to me. When Mai makes the self-sacrificial choice, when she chooses to die in Imigo's place, that isn't the good or true ending, but it had to happen for her to get there. She doesn't know it, but she has experienced this multiple times. We aren't the only ones who get the sense of having been here before. And even the true ending is bittersweet. No matter what choices you make, Mai is going to lose a family member by the end of the story. Her and Imigo are going to have this hollow place that they can never fully explain, built up by all the repeated versions of this life they have lived. There are characters who you can't save from themselves, no matter what you do, no matter what ending you get, and they don't get a time travel redo the way Mai does. It is devastating, even when you end in the best of all possible worlds. I could keep talking about Yotsume God forever, and maybe I will make a video about this game specifically someday because I really would like to talk about it more, but there is one more game I have to discuss for this video. And even though it's not my favorite, that will always be Yotsume God, it is probably the most important game in the SEEC Incorporated catalog. The year is 2024. My SEEC obsession has mostly faded to the background at this point, when I receive a DM from a very dear friend. Wait, don't you like Tascari Hotel? There's an anime? I responded to this in an incredibly well-adjusted way and definitely did not react more than someone should for an anime announcement about a game they like. But oh my god, whose idea was it to make a Tascari Hotel anime? And can we get them some kind of medal? So let's establish what Tascari Hotel is first. The game was released in late 2017, and it's definitely the most polished title I talk about today, barring Reunion. It also pisses me off the most because of how many fucking ads there are built into the game. Tascari Hotel introduces a gacha function. It's dire. My distaste for the King from Royal Match started back with Prison Boys, but it didn't really blossom into full vitriolic hatred until I had to sit through multiple Royal Match ads in a row to get through the gacha section of Tascari Hotel. It's definitely the one step back that this game takes in order to have 2 steps forward. But it does move forward, and it's an amazing part of the SEEC catalog. Here is a brief overview. The main character is a high school girl who just arrived in Purgatory, and she's trying to figure out whether she's alive or dead. In the meantime, she works at Tascari Hotel where other lost souls stay, and she helps them move on until she can learn the truth about herself. It's already a really compelling concept, right? And I can't even get into the really interesting stuff that goes on later, because like with Yotsume God, I don't want to spoil this game in case you play it. But this game had me going, oh my god, is he actually gonna... Oh my, holy whoa, there's no way there, oh my god! More than any other game that I talked about today. This one has more wacky trigger warnings because beyond the implied death and things like overdose and drug use, we also have things like murder, implied sexual assault, never shown, and cannibalism. As you might imagine, the cannibalism is the part that made me go, oh my god, the most, so look forward to that. I'll try not to talk about the plot any more than this. There is a scene in the earlier chapters where a character gives you a hand mirror. And you will never believe what you do with it. That's right, you use it to show a reflection during a timed section of the game. I've got you figured out, SEEC Incorporated. You can't touch me! This game also introduces voice acting for the first time. Yotsume God Reunion is fully voiced, but of the mobile releases, this is the first one to have any kind of character sound effects. It amazes me how far this company came in just a few years, because even barring the blight that is Infinite Prison, the comparison between Toskari Hotel and Alice's Spiritual Judge is staggering. If I had to recommend a single one of the games that I talk about today, and you aren't willing to buy Yotsume God Reunion, it has to be this one. It's more polished, it has more features, it's well written, it plays better, the music is fantastic. The puzzles in this one are SEEK Escape at its finest. Because the setting is already so abstract, the game gives itself permission to get really ridiculous with its puzzles, and I just love that. If you like point-and-click adventure games, I really think you'll like this one. And if you have a problem with ads, it's your lucky day. Toskari Hotel Renewal came out in 2022, another Steam remaster just like Yotsume God Reunion, except it's not translated into English, so I can't play it. Do you know how much this haunts me? There are a lot of games in the SEEK catalog that I pretty much accept I will never be able to play because they are never going to be translated. But I already love Toskari Hotel, and I want to spend money on a better version of it that's just totally inaccessible to me. This shit is harrowing. I kind of feel like I'm in hell myself. Is this my personal purgatory, waiting for a game that I will never get to see? But let's talk about another adaptation of Toskari Hotel for a second, the anime that is coming in January of 2025, very soon at the time I'm recording this video. There is no world where I would have expected any SEEK game to get an anime. Actually, the last time I was looking into this franchise before I started research for this video, I kind of assumed the studio was just failing, because a lot of their earlier games were ending service on the App Store. For the record, the anime just looks okay. I think it'll be similar in quality to the Ace Attorney anime, a really cool thing for fans and a way to get into the franchise, but not something that can necessarily compare with the game itself. I'm curious about how they'll approach the story because Toskari Hotel has multiple endings. I wonder if they will just go with the true end or if they will have pieces of those other branching storylines. For the most part, though, it's the idea of this anime that excites me a lot more than its execution. Because if anything can get English speakers into SEEK games, it's probably this. And if more English speakers get into SEEK games, maybe they'll translate Renewal. Now that we've arrived at the end of this video, I guess I can let you in on my master plan. I made this so that more English speakers might get interested in SEEK games. SEEK Incorporated completely changed the way I think about mobile games, and I feel like I owe it to them as a company to try and create a greater audience for them in the West. Now that you've watched this video, it's your job to go forth and spread my message. We will get a proper localization, not just of Toskari Hotel Renewal, but of every single SEEK game out there. We will... One second, I'm getting a phone call. It's my manager. We've been talking about this. I'm pretty sure they have good news about this going forward. One second. Yeah, hi. Oh, what's that? Yeah, I know. Yeah, my YouTube channel only has 15 subscribers, but... And even if a bunch of people played Toskari Hotel, that doesn't mean they would ever translate it. And ultimately, the desires of the American market won't have a meaningful impact on a company based on the other side of the planet. And it's only my misguided view that centers my country as the most important one in the world that makes me think I'm owed something like this. And I don't actually have a manager because I'm not a professional YouTuber. And this isn't a real phone call. And this isn't a real phone. Wow, that's a lot to take in. I'm gonna have to call you back. Yeah, I know. Yeah, love you. Bye. That was the most upsetting phone call I've ever had to fake in my entire life. I gotta go. I'm sorry. I can't do this anymore. Cut the cameras.